Okay. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the webinar. Thank you all for joining us today. We're very excited to have you all and a seasoned QuickBooks expert join us on today's session. So let's kick things off with some quick introductions before we jump into today's topic of making the switch from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online. So first I'll introduce myself. I'm Felipa Alves. I'm the content marketing strategist here at Method, and I'll be your host and moderator for today. I'm very excited to have Brad White, the Chief People and Operations Officer at VARC Solutions, join me today. Welcome, Brad.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure to have you. And now that we're all a little bit more acquainted with each other, let's kick today's session off with a question for the audience. So my question for you is, which QuickBooks version are you currently using? Is it QuickBooks Online? Is it Desktop Pro, Premier, or Enterprise? Is it QuickBooks Desktop, but you're looking to switch to Online? A different accounting software like Xero, or none of the above, but you're considering QuickBooks Online? I know here at Method we use QuickBooks Desktop, actually. Yeah, QuickBooks Desktop. Okay, so the responses are coming in. I will be closing the poll soon, and let's see what everyone is saying. Okay, so the vast majority of you is using QuickBooks Desktop Pro, Premier, or Enterprise. That's very interesting. And with that, my first question for you, Brad, is QuickBooks Desktop getting discontinued?
Well, thank you. It's a great question. And it's a question that we get fairly frequently, and more frequently the last couple of years. The short answer and the good answer for those of you that are using QuickBooks Desktop is not necessarily immediately. I think the writing is on the wall. I think it's not a secret. Intuit is moving to QBO. Intuit would like everyone to be on QuickBooks Online, and they're doing a lot of things to try to make that happen. But the short answer is it going to be discontinued? I think, yes, eventually it will be. There's no question about it. It will eventually be. The people who are, in Vegas doing the betting at this point, it's just a matter of how long, right? Is it going to be a year? Is it going to be 5 years? I would, I'm not into it, right? So when they are ready to make that announcement, they will let the world know. My personal prediction is I think QuickBooks Pro Premier is probably going to be discontinued here in the next couple of years. Okay, and I'm saying 2 years. Okay, the reason why I say that is because as a QuickBooks solution provider, we're talking with Intuit all the time. We're talking with clients about what software they're needing. We're doing pricing and orders and quotes and all that other stuff for QuickBooks. And what Intuit has been doing very systematically is making it less and less appealing to be and stay on the desktop platform. Okay, pricing, subscription models, raising the prices, reducing the discounts. I mean, they're doing a lot of things just from a market perspective to try to get people on QBO. So I think it is just a matter of time. My personal prediction, again, probably in the next 2 years, that they'll eventually stop selling it. Okay, now stop selling it is different than being discontinued. Okay, in other words, if you're already on QuickBooks Desktop, let's just say, hypothetically today Intuit announces, hey, we're not going to sell QuickBooks Desktop anymore. You'll still be able to use your desktop product probably for at least 3 years. Intuit has a sunset policy, and what that basically means is they will support the current version of QuickBooks for at least 3 years. And so if let's just say you had QuickBooks Pro or Premier 2023, and today they stopped selling it, you would be able to keep using that software legitimately for the next 3 years, and potentially longer. But along with those sunset policies, they also are tied to what I call cloud connected services. So for example, if you're on QuickBooks Desktop and you've got your bank connected so that you're downloading transactions, well, that's a cloud service integrated with QuickBooks. That stuff typically would stop working after 3 years, okay? If you're using a payroll service along with your QuickBooks Desktop, that would typically stop after 3 years. So, so one, you're going to be able to keep using Desktop for at least a couple more years, period. But once they make the announcement, you've got probably a 3-year period before things will stop working. Okay, in which case you'll be forced to move to QBO. So I think that's one thing to just keep in mind. The other desktop product, however, is QuickBooks Enterprise Solutions, and that's a very, very different story. Okay, QuickBooks Enterprise Solutions, on the other hand, is one, it's the most robust, most complicated, capable, if you will, product that they have, and it also happens to be the most expensive. And subsequently, it actually makes into a pretty good amount of money. So it's a profitable product for them. And so even though there is a significant push to get people on QuickBooks Online, I think that will be the last desktop product to go because it is very profitable for Intuit. And it is very, very capable accounting system. Part of the underlying process here is Intuit is trying to make their QuickBooks Online software more and more capable, more and more robust. Get to that point where they've got feature parity with the desktop products. QuickBooks Online, QuickBooks Enterprise Solutions, however, is pretty capable, and so it's going to take a few years, in my opinion, for QuickBooks Online to get to that point where it's matching the capabilities of QuickBooks Enterprise Solutions. So I think that will be the last one to go, and it'll probably go on for at least a few more years after Pro Premier gets discontinued. So I think, if that's my crystal ball thinking in terms of our experience with Intuit for what it's worth.
Thank you for that, Brad. Yeah, it looks like the future is cloud-based. Everyone is moving to the cloud, so it will be interesting to see how this transitions pan out. Next, I'm curious to know what to anticipate when moving to QuickBooks Online. But before we get into this, I wonder, Brad, when and why should QuickBooks Desktop users make the move to QuickBooks Online?
It's another great question, and I got to say there's two primary reasons, but a few more detailed reasons. I think the biggest one is that people are wanting to leverage those other cloud-connected services. Okay, we see it all the time with the clients that we work with. There's more and more companies that are connecting with online stores. More and more companies that are setting up a Shopify e-commerce web store, right? And you want that stuff connected to your QuickBooks. You don't want to have to retype sales orders. You don't want to have to keep manually keeping inventory in sync if you're an inventory-based business. And so, but you also have other, cloud services that you may be wanting to leverage. Maybe you've got a Bill.com or a Tipalti AP automation solution. Okay, well, those are cloud solutions, and they work better with other cloud software programs like QBO. Maybe you're a company that has more complicated inventory needs, and so you've looked online to see what cloud inventory solutions are out there. And so there's a couple good ones that we work with. Sin7, Deer Systems is one that's cloud-based, SOS Inventory, Fishbowl Online. So there's a number of them, but again, those connect to QuickBooks Online more seamlessly. And so whether it's connecting with your bank or connecting with a CRM system like Method, those are things that people are wanting to do more and more and more because that's the way the world is going and that's the way it's been going. And so that's probably the biggest reason why to make the move is you're just wanting to live in a more connected world where everything just kind of works better, right? Less manual downloads and manual imports and things like that, okay? I'd say the other reason why people might consider switching to QuickBooks Online sooner than later is, if you're in a simple business, like in other words, there's not a lot of complexity to your accounting needs, it's possible that QuickBooks Online can actually on model. So, and the discounts again have been taken away. The prices have been increased for desktop. So those were our strategic moves from Intuit to get you to reevaluate. Hey, I might not have wanted the subscription model with QBO. Well, now there's no choice. It's all subscription, okay, desktop and online. And so it might just be that if your business is simple enough, now that pricing makes sense for you, and QuickBooks Online could be a very, very good fit. Okay, I already mentioned the subscription model, but again, the native integration of QBO with some of these other cloud-enabled services, and that could be things like, using an integration platform like Zapier that you want to connect with your Google Sheets or your Gmail or your, Salesforce or your task management system that you've got. All those things are kind of out there in the cloud working, and you might be picking and choosing which apps you want to use. Well, your accounting is a central component of that, and ultimately we want to make that stuff work together. But kind of like the last point that you can see on the screen is, in terms of user permissions and user limits as well. QuickBooks Pro, you can have up to 3 users. Okay, QuickBooks Premier, you can have up to 5 users. And so if you've got more than 5 people that you want in your accounting system, QuickBooks Online actually can go up to 25. So again, it's got different tiers that you can subscribe to, but you can have up to 25 users in QuickBooks Online if you go up to QBO Advanced. And so those are another reason why you might want to is if you have more users than your system allows you to do right now.
Thank you so much, Brad. Very useful insights there. It seems that sooner or later, all, or at the very least, most QuickBooks users will make the transition to online. It's just inevitable. And to that point, I'm wondering, what tips do you have for those making the move to QuickBooks Online?
Yeah, it's another good question. And the short answer is do it carefully, okay? Do it methodically, do it with your eyes wide open, okay? So, for example, we do, and again, this is going to sound very selfish, and I apologize in advance for that. Our company is a QuickBooks solution provider, okay? We help clients get the right software. We help set up the right software. We do migrations and do all these different types of things. The reason I share that is we have experience doing this specific migration from desktop to online. We have specific experience migrating from other systems to QuickBooks Online, and they're not always pretty. They don't always work well, and so knowing that in advance is actually very, very helpful. We can actually talk to somebody who's considering this move, ask them some basic questions about what they're doing, how they're doing it, what features are critical, what are their expectations about the migration, and be able to tell them it's going to work, it's not going to work, or it may work, or hey, we can try it and see what happens, and here's our plan B if it doesn't work. Here's the problem. QuickBooks Online is not just a carbon copy of QuickBooks Desktop. And they didn't just take the product and go, copy paste into QBO land, and so now here's this software, and it looks and works exactly the same. No, it's actually very, very different. QuickBooks Online looks different, feels different, works different. It doesn't have all the same features. The workflows of those features are oftentimes a little bit different, right? And so that's why I say have a conversation with a QSP, because if the one thing that you need is super, super important, we can tell you if it's in the software or not in the software, okay? Or some of the complexities of that migration, okay? So that's probably the first and most important thing I would do, is don't just go buy it and hope it works and convert your data file and be potentially unhappy as a result and then try to figure out how to get back, that's hard. That is really, really hard. So instead, work with folks like us. I mean, you don't have to go through us, but go through a QuickBooks solution provider, somebody who's an expert in QuickBooks, and can advise you on that migration. The other tip is really to start a trial. You know, kick the tires, see how it works, because and here's kind of like the inside secret. If you're a brand new company, okay, you've never used QuickBooks Desktop or maybe any other accounting product out there, you could sign up for QBO and probably love it. I mean, as is, it's a great product, right? But if your context is this other software that you've been using for the last 10 years, and that's what you know and that's what you love and you're comfortable with it and it just kind of sort of works, right? Take that experience and dive into QBO, and you may not be as happy because it is very different, right? So you need to basically set your expectations that there's going to be a ramp-up period of getting used to this new system. So we do recommend that you start with a free trial, and I'll share in the chat for those of you that are interested. You know, we've got a couple links in there where you can do a free trial, and it includes the discounts and stuff like that we have. But check it out. You know, sign up for a free account using the link. Kick the tires for a couple days. Have your accounting folks look at it. Have your owner look at it. Look at some sample reports, and see if it's going to be a fit before you consider migrating your data and going through that work, because it can be very challenging.
Thank you again for the insight. Here at Method, we're actually big believers in doing your homework and putting in the time to research solutions, especially software, because it can be a bit of a hefty investment, especially if you're committing a long time, and asking questions, asking for help when we need it. I feel like that's the best way to go. It's very responsible business-wise to get a good understanding of the full picture before you dive in, and yeah, ask for help from those people who actually know what they're talking about, such as a solution provider. With that, I do have a second poll, and it's today's last. I'm wondering what are the audience's expectations regarding switching to QuickBooks. So do you think that the user experience will be mostly the same in QuickBooks Online? Do you think that all the features you had in QuickBooks Desktop will be available in QuickBooks Online? Do you think that things will be different and you'll need some time to get up to speed? Or do you think that you'll need help getting started due to the differences regardless? I see a few of you have voted. I'll give you a few more seconds to get your votes in, and then we'll see what the audience is saying. Okay, I'll share the results. So it seems like the majority of you expect things to be different and that you'll need time to get up to speed, followed up by people already know that they will need the help. So that's great, and that's sort of why we're here today, to give you those answers. This brings me to my next question for you, Brad. What limitations does QuickBooks Online pose that QuickBooks Desktop didn't? And sort of as a follow-up to that, how can users overcome those limitations?
Good question. In fact, let me just touch on something that kind of showed up on that poll, though, just real briefly before we do that. And so, yeah, the question was like, what are my expectations, right, versus what's the reality? And so I think, I mean, if I was on another platform, especially QuickBooks Desktop, okay, if you're coming from Xero or some other system, I'm not sure if the expectations would be the same, but if you're in that same Intuit family, right, and you're going from one QuickBooks product to another QuickBooks product, it seems reasonable to expect the experience to be the same. Okay, the reality is, again, it's not the same. You know, desktop product sometimes, you know, well, I wasn't going to say sometimes the desktop product can be a little faster. In some cases it is, in some cases it isn't. But similarly, right, when you got a cloud software program, you're also at the mercy of internet speeds and things like that. So there's multiple factors to consider there. But when Intuit came out with QuickBooks Online, they literally rebuilt it from a blank sheet of paper. They didn't look at desktop and go, let's just copy it. So it is different. The people who built it are not the same people who built desktop 20 years ago, 25 years ago. So I think even though the expectation is legitimate, the reality is that the QuickBooks Online, the experience is different. Now, that's not something necessarily to be afraid of. I think it's just a matter of just knowing that going in, that yes, and people acknowledge on the poll, things will be different. It is going to take a little time to get acclimated, and yeah, you might need some help because it is, it is so different. So the good news is, and this is kind of like the positive side of that story. QuickBooks Intuit, when they came out with QuickBooks Online, and as they've been building it and building it and building it, they've leveraged those cloud features. They've leveraged the ability of using new technology to do improvements and to make it faster and make it easier to navigate. And so they are doing things to leverage that cloud technology that didn't exist when they started with desktop. So they are trying to use the platform in the best way possible. So anyways, I just want to address that. So your question though is really about limitations. Okay. So what limitations does QuickBooks Online pose that QuickBooks didn't? Okay. Now this question is a good one, and it's also an evolving story. Okay, because QuickBooks Online, Intuit is spending a lot of time and a lot of money developing this program, not just to stay ahead of competitors, but because they also know that they're competing against their own product when it comes to the desktop platform. So they are trying to make the product have feature parity, but it's also not quite there in every case. So let me just set the ground floor. Basic accounting functions, yeah, absolutely there. If you want to enter bills, pay bills, do an invoice, write a check, connect to your bank, do credit card charges, do your financial statements, QuickBooks Online does all of that. Okay, so there's no question about that. The question is the more advanced features that maybe over the last 25 years have been built into QuickBooks Desktop. They may not necessarily be in QuickBooks Online today. And I think the perfect example of that is companies that do inventory. Okay, so QuickBooks Online has what I would categorize as basic inventory. If you have services that you're charging for, that's fine, right? If you have 5, 10, 15 different products that you maybe buy and sell, great, no problem at all. But if you're the type of company that has more advanced inventory needs, where maybe you're doing manufacturing, okay, maybe you're doing assemblies where you buy these components and you need to build those into a finished good plus the labor and have this total finished good and be able to show that effectively on your profit and loss, for the cost of it sold and all those types of things. QuickBooks Online natively does not do that. Okay, QuickBooks Online has this thing called groups where you could sell kind of like a kit, but it's selling the individual components together as opposed to combining them into a finished good. So that's the manufacturing component, right? So I think that's one. And then kind of related to that is, when we've got clients that we're working with that have used maybe QuickBooks Enterprise Solutions with advanced inventory in the desktop world, usually the key features that are needed are things like serial lot number tracking, okay? Or, hey, I've got 5 different warehouses, or I've got 2 warehouses and 5 trucks, and I need to know that my inventory is on in these different locations, on these different trucks, pick, pack, ship, do all that stuff. Track bins and locations. In QuickBooks Online, again, natively by itself does not do that. There's cloud systems out there. For example, I think Mysis was one of the questions that I saw in chat. SOS Inventory, Gear Systems, Fishbowl Online. These are cloud inventory solutions that do handle all that stuff. And they integrate with QBO. Okay, so part of this is just a change of your mindset and your thinking process. In other words, and this is, again, I think this is strategically part of Intuit's product life cycle, is they are not trying to make QBO natively the end-all, be-all solution for every single industry, every single company, every single type of business. No, they're creating a platform that other companies and other solutions can be built to handle these various different complexities, but still have it integrate back with QBO. So you really have to think of QBO as an ecosystem. You have to think of QBO as a platform that I can use to connect my world with other solutions that are unique to me, that are specially catered to me. Okay, inventory is the standout in terms of the big feature that just isn't very robust in QuickBooks Online by itself. The other, which depending on your needs could be equally significant, is the CRM system. QuickBooks, and by the way, this is true of desktop as well. QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online has never really been a CRM system. Okay, yeah, you can keep track of your customers. Yep, and you can invoice them. Yep, you can do all those things, but it's not there to manage your sales pipeline, right? It's not to have a sales force that's managing prospects and leads and quotes and all those other things and be able to manage that process. You can't even have multiple contacts per client, right? Which is the case for probably 9 times out of 10. When I've worked with a client, there's more than one person I'm trying to work with. And so that's where method comes into play, because they have built, that CRM system that's best in class, that integrates with QBO and has those capabilities to solve that problem. So anyways, those are just a few.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Many terrific points there. Now, and especially based on your experience with your clients as a QuickBooks solution provider, are there any challenges when migrating from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online?
Yeah, there is. And so, and by the way, I say that, with hesitancy. I mean, I would love to be able to just, tout the Intuit storyline, which is that it's easy, it works flawlessly, and everything's amazing. But that's really not the case. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. If you have a very simple business, you're not using inventory. Maybe you're not even using QuickBooks Payroll. You're using an outsourced payroll like ADP or Paychex or something like that. Maybe you especially don't have multi-currency. You're not doing manufacturing. Okay, so if you've got a very simple business, okay, and secondly, your file is not terribly large. Okay, so you haven't been using QuickBooks Desktop for 20 years. Maybe you've used it for a few years. Okay, and now you're looking at switching. Those migrations can actually work just fine. I mean, they can be seamless. You click a button, 10 minutes, 15 minutes later, you're migrated and everything's there. Okay. But I would say that the reason why we get calls all the time related to migrations is because it is not always simple, right? We're getting the calls when somebody has tried to migrate and it failed, right? There's some reason why it failed, it didn't work, the balances before and after are not the same, there's some issue, right? That's when we get the call to help solve that problem. So when it comes to those migrations, I think the sticky points, okay, are if you're using any of those features that are in desktop that are not in QuickBooks Online, that's kind of a showstopper, okay, in terms of the automatic migration, right? If you've got payroll, especially assisted payroll, that's actually one that Intuit has to assist with if you're migrating to QuickBooks Online payroll. If you're using advanced inventory, if you've got multi-currency, it just won't even work. Okay, literally it won't migrate. So you have to kind of do a plan B. The times again that we get calls because there's a potential problem with that migration is because my data is corrupt at some level. Okay, there are, Intuit basically has a migration tool, but if you have exceeded any of the limits of what that tool can handle, it just won't work. So, you know, if you've got, again, if you've been using QuickBooks Desktop for 15 years and you've got a 2 gigabyte company file and it's not going to migrate, right? It'll just stop, or it'll just tell you at some point, this file won't migrate. The other kind of related challenge to that is the longer you use QuickBooks in that desktop world, the more likely that there's a corruption somewhere within that data. Okay, doesn't mean you're going to have an automatic corruption of any sort, but it's more likely to be there. And you don't oftentimes see those corruptions until you start migrating to something else, and QuickBooks is trying to, you know, literally read every little bit and byte and convert that over to QBO. And if there are corruptions in there, that can be a showstopper. Okay. There are certainly tools in desktop where you can, you know, try to repair the database. You know, you can archive, condense. You can try to get rid of old years worth of history and maybe fix that kind of scenario. But those are oftentimes problems with migrations. Is just the file is too big. And then you actually have skipped the first bullet point, which is also just the learning curve. Okay, that is a challenge, right? That is something that is a challenge in that migration. Again, mostly because people just assume, right, that it's going to be a very, very similar experience, and the reality is it's not. So it just has, you need to build time into your migration plan to not just say, hey, on, you know, April 1st or January 1st, we're switching, and we expect to be fully productive that day one. No, you plan on switching, plan on, you know, having at least a week or so just to get up to speed and get used to the new system. And if you can do that in a trial account before you make that switch, even better. Okay. So let me just add one more point, Felipe, if I could, because this is something, again, that we deal with on a regular basis with clients. So the happy path is I've got my desktop product, I've just signed up for QuickBooks Online, I see this option to convert my data, and I try it, and it works. That's the happy path. And that does happen, okay? It does happen that way in many cases. When it doesn't convert, or to your earlier poll, let's say you've got 0 and you're trying to convert to QBO, okay? Or you've got Sage, or, you know, Sage 100 or Sage 200 or some other system that you're converting from. Most of the time when you're converting from some other system into QuickBooks Online, you're going to have to do what's called a shell file, okay? Because there's not necessarily just an automatic one-click migration process, right? So I don't even think shell file is like a term that most people even know what that means. So let me just define that real quickly. Shell file basically means instead of migrating a company from here to there along with all of the data, okay, what you're doing basically is creating a brand new company file from scratch, not migrating, but creating a new file from scratch, a clean file, and then importing the list. So you might have to go to your old system and export your customer list, your vendor list, your product list, your employee list, right? Your chart of accounts, account balances, right? And then the shell file process is you're creating a brand new file and then importing those lists in. But after you do that, all your balances are still 0, and so you have to go in and import or, you know, do journal entries to get your opening balances in. Okay, sounds nice, sounds fine, but then the follow-up question always is, what about the last 3 years worth of history? I want the last 5 years of my company's detailed transactions. I want the last 3 years, 2 years, whatever it is. And in almost every case, the answer is not going to happen. Okay, almost every case, without manual data entry, that is, because again, you're dealing with a different accounting software that has different features, different fields, different formatting, and that data is just not easy to migrate. And so what we tend to do, you know, as much as clients hate to hear it, is we've got the other system and we can use that for historical lookups if we need to, but we do a lot of shell files when we can't just convert the data, and we'll do journal entries to get the balances in there. We'll do opening balances, so you have your uncleared checks, your open invoices that haven't been paid, those kind of things. And if somebody wants a little bit more of a look back where they want to be able to go look at the last 3 years P&Ls, okay? Well, we can do an annual journal entry to get those numbers in there on an annualized basis. Okay, it's not the detail, but it might get you close. Or let's say you wanted to say, I want the last 12 months worth of history on a monthly basis. Same thing. We can go in and do journal entries on a monthly basis to get you that P&L by month. For comparison purposes, that helps you going forward. And basically, when we talk to clients about that as a solution, it is literally just a cost per effort type of scenario. So the more you want, the more it's going to cost, the more time it's going to take, and the more detailed checking and before and after checking that kind of goes involved. So just know that there are solutions out there, even if it won't migrate. But also just know that it will take some time, and it will take some money to have someone like us or anybody else, for that matter, to get that data migrated over.
Thank you, Brad. That was actually very, very helpful. And for those joining us today who are ready to make the jump, tell me, what's the best way to go about purchasing QuickBooks Online?
Another good question. So let me answer it this way. You have a choice in terms of how you buy your software. Okay, there are 3 primary ways of going about it. Okay, what most people do, I don't recommend it, but this is what most people do. Okay, is they just call into it, or they go to QuickBooks.com and buy it. Okay, it works. It works. You're going to get your software, but most often you're going to end up paying more than you should. Okay, you're going to end up paying more than you have to. This is kind of the fun part about being inside the industry. We know what the prices are. We know what the retail prices are. Well, we know what the promos that Intuit is offering are. Whether it's a President's Day promotion, or a Labor Day promotion, or a Black Friday, Cyber Monday, we know when they're running promotions, and we can offer those same promotions. But if you just go into it and buy it, sign up, you're going to end up paying more than you have to. Okay. Almost everything at Intuit sells, they will give you a discount up front for sure. Okay. But usually at some point it's going to go up to a full retail. Okay. And that's true pretty much across the board. Okay. Even if you bought it from us, at some point prices typically go up to full retail. But as a QuickBooks solution provider, the second way to get QuickBooks Online, or any other payroll, merchant account, whatever, is to go through what is called a QSP. Okay, that's short for QuickBooks Solution Provider. I recommend that you do that for a couple different reasons. First off, number one, we can typically save you money. Okay, so for example, instead of what you can get direct with Intuit, which is currently asterisk, for Intuit subject to change, currently it's 50% off, but it's only good for 3 months, and then it goes up to full retail. Going through a QSP like us, we can actually get you a 30% discount, which is a little bit smaller, but it lasts for the full 12 months. So ultimately, we save you money. And most clients that we sign up for QuickBooks Online, we're saving them a couple $100, $200, $300, $400 that first year. Okay, so it's not insignificant. But I would say, related to that, the reason why you should call and speak with a QSP is that we are experts in the software. Okay, we know the software. We can advise you on what is the best software for you. We're not going to try to sell you QuickBooks Online Advanced if all you need is QuickBooks Simple Start, right? I'd say the majority of the clients that we work with are on QuickBooks Online Plus, because it has the basic features plus a few extra little things that most people need. Okay, but we can talk to you about your situation and say, well, what are you doing? What are you hoping to do? And we can make sure that you're in the right software. And some people sign up for QuickBooks Payroll, some people sign up for ADP Payroll. We can have that conversation too, and actually give you competitive pricing as well. So the long and short of it is, you can buy direct if you know everything about it and you feel like you can make a good decision. Great, do it. You might pay a little bit more. Going through a QSP, we can advise you and potentially save you some money. The other way, the third way, is going through what is called a pro advisor. Okay, so pro advisors are basically QuickBooks consultants out there Sometimes they're bookkeepers, sometimes they're CPAs, sometimes they're tax preparers, but at some level, these are QuickBooks consultants typically, okay? And pro advisors can also sell you the software. And sometimes that's good, and sometimes it's not so good. So let me just, again, I'm trying to educate. The thing with the pro advisor is oftentimes they're bundling the software with their services. Okay, so it's a little bit, they're taking a little bit of the transparency away from what am I actually paying for my software, because it's, you know, hey, I'm going to charge you X for bookkeeping, and it includes the software. So I may not know exactly what I'm paying for the software. And again, that could be a good thing because they could just be buying it at wholesale and passing along that wholesale rate. Okay, could be. They also can buy it wholesale and mark it up to you and include that markup in their services. But I think the key feature there, the key component that I think a lot of people don't realize until later, okay? So it's not just an initial purchase decision, it's a what are the consequences later? And again, we deal with this all the time, is when you buy through a pro advisor, especially if they're bundling the software with their services, you're kind of attached to them, okay? You're kind of attached to that pro advisor. And so let's assume for a second, you know, that it starts off great, you love their services, and maybe a year later or 2 years later, you're maybe not in a happy place with their services. It's a little harder at that point to separate, okay? It's harder to switch from one pro advisor to maybe another pro advisor without having that fee be a problem. And so basically the pro advisors have to kind of kick you out of their accountant package. And what typically happens in that case is no matter what you were paying for the software before, you're going to be up to full retail when they kick you out, okay? Or when you choose to leave and ask them to do that. So just know going into it that if you go through a pro advisor, oftentimes that software is getting attached to them. And so it makes it a little harder to separate. Whereas going through a QSP or buying directly on QuickBooks.com, you get to maintain that direct billing relationship with Intuit. You get to cancel whenever you want to, and nobody's feelings are going to get hurt. You can come when you want, leave when you want, and you've got full visibility on the pricing. So anyway, that's about all I can say about that.
Yeah, and again, what you see now in the presentation, the deal that Brad talked about, it's the same link that is currently in the chat if you guys want to check that out. I have one question though, Brad. For those who are already on QuickBooks Online, can they use a discount?
Very, very good question, and the short answer is no. That's one of those things with Intuit that if you know, if you're already on QuickBooks Online and you've already got a subscription, Intuit will not apply a discount after the fact. I mean, unless you're literally willing to cancel your subscription and start a brand new one, which honestly, I mean, that's a hassle. You know, that's a hassle, and I wouldn't, if I was the owner of the business, I wouldn't want to do it. Even if I could save a little bit of money, I might not want to do that just because the time to transition and set up a new file and move things, there's a cost to that as well. So I typically would I just consider that a sunk cost that you're just gonna have to live with if you're already on QBO.
Thank you for that. Very well then. For those of you who may be looking to make the jump soon or in the future, like Brad mentioned before, Method does help fill some of the gaps for the QuickBooks users. The beautiful thing about Method CRM is that it helps you extend the power of QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop. With Method, you not only eliminate the need for double data entry, but you can also manage your leads, your customers, job scheduling, and do so much more from a single platform. The way that this works is that thanks to Method's two-way sync engine with QuickBooks, any change that is made on one end will automatically update on the other. So you can automate approval workflows for estimates, invoices, and more. And then the two-way sync empowers your team with the information they need while keeping your QuickBooks file secure and clean, which is always helpful, especially for end of the year as you prepare for tax returns. Another thing is Method offers native integrations with other small business favorites, such as Gmail, Outlook, MailChimp, Zapier. So you can automate workflows across your business while still binding your existing tech stack. You can get started with a free trial, no credit card or contract required. And for that, I'll be dropping also a link in the chat for those of you who are interested. And for all your QuickBooks needs, VARC Solutions is your best option. I had a question from Stephanie coming through asking how to get the conversation started. Brad, why don't you tell us a bit more of what it is that you do and how the audience can reach out to you?
Yeah, thanks. Really appreciate it. Yeah, so again, just kind of going back to the basic concept, right? We're a QuickBooks solution provider, and solution is a key part of that company name. Our job is to help build solutions for clients and advise clients on solutions, okay? We don't do CPA stuff. We don't do tax stuff. We are a solution provider. We're trying to get you to the right software, help data migrated. We do all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, if we can't help you, we're going to say we can't help you, right? So no skin off my back on that scenario. So what we do as a company is we are a pro advisor. I mean, we do pro advisor services when it comes to the QuickBooks consulting stuff. But as a QSP, we can sell you the software. We can get you signed up for payroll, signed up for merchant accounts at better rates than our retail, okay? And again, save you some money on the software purchases for sure. Most of the companies that we start an engagement with, normally there's a little bit of a cleanup, right? I haven't reconciled my checking account in 2 years, right? Or, you know, the lady that I had doing my accounting just left and it's a mess, and there's some cleanup. Very common, right? So we do cleanups. We do catch-ups. You know, if things haven't been touched, entered, reconciled in a certain number of months or years, we do that kind of work. And sometimes that's all it takes, right? It's just getting you caught up, showing you how to do a few things that are on your daily list of tasks, and then hand it back to you, and now you can take it over and run forward with it. For other clients, we do ongoing bookkeeping. So, you know, we're actually doing the books. We're entering, you know, encoding the transactions from your Amex or from your checking account. We're doing the bank recs. We're doing the financials. Entering bills, paying bills, you know, all those types of things that some people don't want to pay someone internally to do. We can do as much of that or as little of that as needed, okay? But what I want this group to kind of take away with is just think of us as the solution providers that are experts in QuickBooks, okay? We're not going to advise you on any other accounting program because we're not experts in it. But if it's QuickBooks, yes, we can help. And so, you know, just to your earlier point, Felipe, about Method, we are partners with Method. We love Method because, not just because we're doing this webinar together, but I mean, seriously, it is the best-in-class CRM system that works with QuickBooks, and so we highly recommend it. But just, you know, those are the conversations that we have with folks when they call us and they're like, hey, I'm trying to do X. What do you recommend? Well, here's your 2 options. Here's your 3 options, but we actually prefer this one based on your customer service. Whatever those things are, that's actually what we do, and that's how we help people.
Thank you so much for that, Brad. Yeah, the solution providers over at VARC can help you get the most of your QuickBooks account, so I do highly recommend you guys check them out. Now we're going to move on to our Q&A portion and open the floor for questions from the audience that we haven't been able to touch on. So if you have those, feel free to drop those in the chat.
Yeah, and I can answer the one that Kelsey has, and I saw a few others. I don't know if you answered them already, but there was a couple questions about Power BI. There was a couple questions about MISIS. Mm-hmm. So first off, in terms of like the Power BI side of things, we work with. So we've done some Power BI stuff. I don't consider myself a Power BI expert, but I have used it and I've seen it and I've played with it a little bit. But for folks that are trying to connect QuickBooks with Power BI, we always recommend a middleman, a middle software called Cube. Okay, that's actually how you pronounce it. It's spelled Q-U-B-E. Okay, so Cube. And so the guy who started QQ many years ago, he's like a data guy. Like his whole thing is like, how do I get data out of Cube or out of QuickBooks and into any other program, whether it was Access, Excel spreadsheets, Power BI, Tableau, Crystal reports, things like that. And so over the last couple of years, they've been building out their Cube Online tool that does basically the same thing as what the desktop product did. So I would take a look at Cube, QQUBE, and check out their online product that would connect with QuickBooks Online, and that would be a good middleman to help connect with Power BI. The key there is that middle software is doing the data mapping, okay, and building the table structure and the data structure, so that all you have to do is connect Power BI to it, and you just almost immediately can be able to go in there and run sales reports, AR reports, go build your dashboards using the data. You don't have to recreate the data from literally just the raw table structure in QuickBooks. Okay, so that's one. The second question, this is kind of like the one that Kelsey was asking, is does QuickBooks Online work with MISIS? And the answer is yes, it does. And what I would say, I shared our contact information in the chat. Reach out to us via the Contact Us page, and we'll get you in touch with our rep at MISIS. And they will be able to instruct you on exactly what to do and how to do it. And we can help translate if we need to as a middleman. But that's another key. It's like using the relationships that we've built with those vendors, we can kind of get you past the 1-800 number to actually somebody who knows what they're doing and knows what they're talking about. And we'd be happy to make an introduction to those guys.
Thank you, Brad. There was a call out from David, I think, about the functionality of invoice templates and how it's very limited nowadays. That's another thing the method can help you with. You can actually customize your own invoice templates, and you can add as much as you want in terms of branding, logo, fields. It's really up to you. So I do recommend you checking us out for that reason. And apart from that, I don't see any more questions. So I would say let's wrap up the session. Thank you everyone for joining us, and a huge thank you especially to Brad for having me today. It's been a pleasure as always. And with that, I would like to remind everyone that we will be sending out the webinar recording very soon. So you can reference what we discussed today and even share it with others who might find it useful. But for now, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and goodbye.
Thank you. Glad to see you, Rita.